Welcome to the EW podcast. I'm your host, Eric White. So there's been a ton of stuff going on in the US since I last published a podcast about a month ago, and I've just been taking a second from podcasting to process everything going on, like a lot of people have been doing. Today's episode has nothing to do with the issues of systemic racism or police violence, but these are conversations I would like to have in the future, and just wanted to note at the start of this episode that due to recent events, I'm considering opening up this platform for discussions beyond just personal well-being and mental health related topics. So while the next few episodes will still be in the realm of well-being, personal triumph, and mental health, I just want to forecast here that there could be some changes coming in future episodes, and to not be surprised if the thread of conversation changes. So, that being said, today's episode is 100% in the realm of personal triumph. In this episode, I speak with my friend Rachel Weisser. Rachel is currently a health coach and a budding personality on Instagram. Here we talk about her personal journey, which includes years of mental health struggles, alcoholism, and attempted suicide. We discuss all of these points in her own story here, and if you're like me, a person who has struggled with all of these things as well, I think you'll find Rachel's openness about her journey particularly refreshing and inspiring. One of the things I love about Rachel is her willingness to share her journey publicly on Instagram. She's not shy to talk about her past and current struggles, and is also very open with normally taboo topics, such as her use of medication, which we also talk about here. So if you're interested in having strong and honest people on your Instagram feed, I recommend giving her a follow. Her tag is @vagabondwellness. You can find that tag on my Instagram page or in the show notes for this podcast. I will just note here that if you are currently struggling with suicidal thoughts or other mental health issues, this episode could have triggers for you. So please do not be shy to reach out to a friend or mental health professional if you don't feel well at any point during this conversation. That being said, I find this episode to have a very empowering message, and I hope that is what is taken away from it by anyone listening. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Rachel Weisser. Cool. So, first question, how's life without hockey right now?
You know, one of my good hockey buddies texted me, I think it was yesterday, but again, all dates are out of whack right now. And she was just like, it's so sad. Today would have been the last game of the season right now. And I'm like, don't remind me.
It's so rough not having that as a distraction right now, and knowing that it would be coming up to that time of just diehard watching.
I know. It's hard. It's like when you take away all those kind of those norms of your life and what you would be doing, it really puts things in perspective of how we are used to living and how we have to make changes now, given the circumstances.
Yeah. What kind of changes have you had to make outside of sports viewing?
I know, right? Well, it's funny because I always considered myself someone who is very much a homebody, a natural self-isolator, and someone who likes to stay inside, stay home. There's always like those memes and those jokes of, cancel your plans, and it's like the most exciting news. And so when this whole news hit of self-quarantining and social distancing, I was like, that's the ultimate, plans canceled. This is great. And then, even within the first week, it really started to hit me that I think we take those things for granted. Like we really actually need them, that human contact. And just even in the most natural way of going out for a walk or going to the store and saying, excuse me, to someone as you pass by, or smiling at someone as you walk by. When you take those simple human interactions away, it starts to kind of really mess with like your psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, like being home, and I'm so thankful to have an animal. Like shout out to all the people with animals out there in the world right now, and who I feel so bad for people who don't. But like all of a sudden I'm home all the time now, and it just makes me realize, I don't know, that I wish I could get back out there and go spend some more time with people. I always consider myself a people person.
Yeah.
And this is hard. This is hard for sure.
Are you still consulting with people through your health coaching?
Yeah. And it's interesting. One of the things, when I'm working with people, like I always ask them, right? One of the first questions I always ask them is, why are you choosing to work with me? And I always lay everything out on the line in terms of social media, in person, who I am. I don't hold anything back. I don't lie. I don't try and, do anything quote unquote for the gram, anything like that. And more often than not, people will tell me, well, you just seemed really real, or I could relate to you, or I appreciated how candid you were on your mental health or your struggle with addiction, or, staying sober. And I have remained true to that throughout this quarantine and beyond. And when I'm working with people through my health coaching, and by that, I'm still doing that right now. So when I'm working with people right now, I'm not pretending like everything's okay. I'm checking in with them just in a way as in they're checking in with me, and keeping each other accountable. So it's almost becoming like a partnership, because I'm not going to stand over here on my side of the fence and be like, I'm a health coach, everything's fine. I'm fine. I'm sticking with routines and everything's great. Like, just because I have this routine, it solves all the problems. Everything's answered. Like, I'll always be real with them and let them know when I'm struggling, and almost use that as a point to check in with them and be like, are you struggling? Are you struggling with this too? Or what are you struggling with? Because here's where I'm struggling. And I think that they appreciate that too. I'm never going to pretend like everything's okay when it's not, just for the sake of either making a sale or making a new client, or I don't even know, making a new like or comment on a post.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I love about your Instagram presence. And I think you do such a cool thing with, is just bringing up those things that are a little bit uncomfortable to talk about maybe, and just kind of repping them super hard and saying, here's my perspective on it. Here's what role this has played in my life and my recovery. And like, why is doing that important to you?
I think when I go back and think about, so I've been sober for just over 3 years now.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I, honestly, I have a lot to say on that. So this might get kind of like choppy and a little bit jumbly all over the place, because that's what the inside of my brain looks like.
Well, we can edit. So
good. But like, when I think back to where I was in my disease, let's go back 5 years ago, let's go back 10 years ago, let's go back when I was in high school, or when I was in college and I was still drinking a lot, and looking around me for some type of support system when I was feeling those feelings of depression or those feelings of immense anxiety, and trying to find ways to cope and deal with it. And looking around at my friends, and looking around at social media, and looking around at movies and celebrities. And I didn't see anyone else dealing with what I was dealing with. Like, maybe I could talk to my friends about it. I probably should have more. They might have been dealing with the same thing I was dealing with. I don't know, because I didn't take that initial leap to talk to someone about it. And if people were out there talking about it, I guess I had my ears closed. I guess I didn't want to hear it. But I think it's so important now, on this side of everything, to be so open and candid about it, because I want people who are still in the disease or who are on the side and sober to know that they're not alone in what they're experiencing, and they can have someone to talk to about it if they want to have someone to talk to about it. And ironically enough, as we're dealing with all of this, like one of the worst things you can do as someone fighting the disease and in the addiction, or as someone who's come out on the other side and is fighting their life with sobriety, is isolate. Isolation is like the devil in addiction. And so it's so important to find those connections. And I think by continuing to speak open and honestly about where I'm at, you're going to find and make those connections and kind of build those bridges to other people. I don't know why this thought just popped in my head. I was watching the newest Star Wars movie last night, and they just kept talking about that line where there's more of us than there are of them. We just need to come together, right? They kept talking about it. And that's kind of like where my brain just went with sobriety and people who are in sobriety. I have this like weird frustration with the drinking culture right now. And I don't know if it's like if it's just like my own issue with like, maybe I'm still holding resentments and jealousy that I can't be out there and drinking and like, woo, White Claw. Like, I don't even know what it tastes like and I never will. And like, maybe that's something I need to sort out. But I feel like we as a quote unquote sober generation aren't doing enough to like stand up and make our voice loud and proud. Like a lot of people almost, and I hear this too in like my meetings and other things, of like people almost like have shame in being sober. Like they don't want to, like they'll be at a party and someone will pass them a beer. And like the worst thing you can do is be like, oh no, man, I'm not drinking. Like God forbid you say I'm sober. People make up excuses and say, no, I'm driving tonight, or no, I can't. Like I'm doing a 30-day cleanse, or I know women who've gone as far to be like, I'm pregnant, and they're not. Like, just because they're so ashamed to say, I'm sober, I don't drink. And I want so badly for us to lose that stigma around being sober and kind of like build that up, so that now when you walk into Target, you don't see all day rosé tank top. You see like sober and sexy tank tops or something like that, like some bullshit. Because like this society that we're in right now, that's like building up this casual drinking culture and how much it's plastered everywhere, whether it's these see a shot, send a shot challenges on social media, or like I said, you see it on clothing items, or there's holidays and things like that. Like, it's so frustrating as someone who's either gone through the disease and the addiction or who's fighting in sobriety right now. Like, we need to build up that side of it. Like, let's make some sober holidays. Let's make some sober t-shirts. Let's kind of talk more about that side of it.
Were you caught up in all that, the other side of it, the negatives aspects of the drinking culture, I guess you would say? Was that a problem for you before? Yeah.
Any excuse to drink, any excuse to drink, any excuse to, I don't want to say hide my drinking or mask my drinking, but if like wearing a tank top that said rosé all day made it okay for me to drink rosé all day, then you know what I mean? Like, that it's just, I don't know. I'm truly trying not to, where I'm at right now, both like in terms of like mental health and the perspective I have on others. Like, I'm not trying to come at it from like a bashing other people and their lifestyle perspective, right? That's really what I'm trying to avoid here and avoid in my life. Like, if that's how you want to live and lead your lifestyle, go for it. All I'm trying to say is like, this is what I did and it works for me. And if you want to make changes, go for it. There's solutions out there for you. And if you want someone to talk to, I'm here. That's the best I can do. Right. And and in doing that, all I can do is like lead a life of example that things can be better, because they were worse for me, but they got better and they continue to be better and get better every day. You know, every new day is a gift.
I've known you for a few years now through Lauren, and it has been super cool to see your change and progression from, that dark moment several years ago. That I think it was probably your rock bottom that really sent you on this journey of like healing and self-improvement. And yeah, before we dive deep into that, I just want to applaud you for everything you've done for yourself. It's really awesome. And I'm happy to talk to you about it today for sure. So do you want to just elaborate on that dark period and what, like, you were going through a depression and drinking, right? Or what was going on with your drinking that took you down such a dark path?
Yeah, it's such a big question. And I only say a big question because my whole life led up to that point, right? And it's like, man, where do I start? Mm-hmm. But part of the thing that I want to start in saying is that what I found out from that incident is that it wasn't only just a drinking problem. It was a problem with depression. And I didn't really realize that. I thought it was either like just a drinking problem or just a depression problem. I didn't realize the kind of two went hand in hand. And I have been depressed for as long as I can remember.
Really?
And when I say as long as I can remember, like I honestly mean that. And some people, I mean, a lot of people might not even actually know this, but like I played around with suicide tactics when I was in 5th grade. Like I tried hanging myself in my bedroom. And I was 10 years old. Nothing ever like that would seriously harm, but because I was like using stuff, rope, and it was on like my bed frame and things like that. But I wanted to know what that sensation was like. And that was kind of the beginning of those self-harm tactics, which led into junior high of like severe cutting, which then ended up being, and by the way, we need to put like a trigger warning to your audience on this for people who we're still struggling with these issues, but went into junior high with the cutting issue, and that got really intense. And that was probably actually one of the darkest times in my life, was in junior high of all times. Maybe it's all the hormones. I don't know.
Were you drinking in junior high too?
I started drinking and smoking in junior high. And I really started having issues and anxiety around people at that time. So I would, ironically enough, isolate from people. I'd go hang out in the baseball fields, and I just stay away from people. I have a really strong memory on I think it was like the last day of school, yearbook signing day, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I went and took my yearbook, and I just stayed in the field by myself.
You were quarantining before the quarantine was a thing.
I'm a quarantine queen, okay? OG quarantine queen over here. And it just continued through high school that way, where all of a sudden those were the outlets that I knew of how to deal with my anxiety, how to deal with this deep, dark, seeping depression, was through these unhealthy habits, these coping habits of cutting myself and of drinking. The cutting was for this immense anxiety that I had, that I felt could only be released once I split. This is going to be graphic. I'm sorry. No. Once I split the skin.
Wow.
So then it felt like it was building. And then I would go through the act, and then it was like an exhale.
Wow.
And then with the internal feelings of depression and self-hate and just that like dark cloud, like I just kept like drinking when I would feel that way, just to kind of feel that like warmth inside, to kind of combat with the cold emptiness. So it's just this weird, bad combination of things that were continuing. And then I got into college into this like crazy wild drinking culture.
Yeah, and it's socially acceptable 100% to just be
100% the norm.
Yeah.
You know where I went to college. It was the mascot was a keg. My God. Like, and so I felt like I'm normal. Like I am normal. This is normal. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I should put that on a t-shirt.
That is a good t-shirt.
And that's going to be your new podcast tee.
I'm normal. Everything's fine.
I'm normal. This is normal. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point while I was there, I did like stop and look around. I think it was sophomore year. And I was like, I'm not okay. I can't be here anymore. Like I had hit this wall, and I remember being like really severely depressed. And I remember telling like Lauren and my roommates and stuff, like, I'm going to switch schools. I got to go home. Like I can't be here anymore. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I'm glad I didn't. I stayed. But fast forwarding a little bit, I graduated and, failed a little bit in some careers and found myself at a cocktail bar and was working there for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And it really just kind of like ignited my drinking even worse and spiraled it, and my drug use at that point. Because I would be able to drink all shift and late into the night, and then we'd get off and we'd go to whatever bar was still open, and I'd do blow in the bathroom and just keep the party going until at that point I was still balancing a full-time job the next day. So I'd wake up at 7:30, and
Wow.
if I would wake up or I'd be late to my job, it was just a hell of a time. It was the worst. This is where I'm like foreshadowing into the darkness of my time at my life at that time. And it was just this spiral that I couldn't get out of. And I'd reached this point where I was, a relationship had ended. So I'd reached a really dark point in my depression where I was just drinking so much to kind of try and forget. And also like a mask that I was just living La Vida Loca and having a great time. Mm-hmm. And I was doing a lot of drugs to kind of combat the fatigue the drinking would give you and the lifestyle that I was doing. And I always say that I drank more and more to try and quiet the voices in my head that were telling me I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't pretty enough, that I wasn't smart enough, that I would never amount to anything. I wouldn't do anything with my life. I was never going to be loved again. All of these things, those voices, they were constantly there, and they're just yelling at me. So I figured I would just drink more and it would quiet the voices. The ironic part is I was wrong. Every time I would drink, they would just get louder and louder until they were screaming at me in my head.
While you're drinking, you felt that kind of building up within you?
To the point that I couldn't even look in mirrors. If I looked in the mirror, it was like I couldn't even see myself. I wouldn't, like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me that I was seeing. Or if it was, it wasn't me that I wanted to see. I hated what I saw. And these voices were screaming so loudly one night that they just told me, just kill yourself. Just end it. You don't have even a life worth living anymore. And so that's what I did. I listened to them. And luckily, I don't really know what happened. I remember to a point that night, but I remember the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm late for work. That was my first thought.
Wow.
I woke up and I was like, I'm late because it was light out. I'm late for work. And there was someone pounding on my door. And it was my manager. Because I guess a bunch of stuff had happened that, like, I had called some people during the night and left some pretty sinister voicemails. And they had gotten, and I'm pretty close with my manager, still close. And they had said something like, you need to go check on Rachel. And so she came to check on me. I don't know, the details are kind of blurry because then someone else came, another friend of mine, and then they ended up taking me to the emergency room. And then I was there for 2 more days, maybe 3 days. And that was just so scary. It was so scary because I think a lot of people can relate to this, but that sense of control, that's the sense of self-control that you have over your life and your ability to do anything is just gone. Mm. And you're laying there in that hospital bed, and there's a security guard standing maybe 4 feet from the foot of your hospital bed. And he's just kind of looking at you at the corner of his eye. And I lean over to my mom and I go, that guy's here for me. And she goes, no, he's not. And I go, yeah, he is. She goes, no, he's not. I'm like, I swear to God, he's here for me. And then maybe 10 minutes later, she leans over and she goes, yeah, I think you're right. I think he's here for you.
There to watch you.
To watch me and make sure I don't leave. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. I can't go to the bathroom. I literally can't go to the bathroom. I have to go in front of them on a stool. Like, it was the worst feeling. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to go home. I learned my lesson. And they're like, we don't think you have, which is probably right. Probably the smartest thing they did. And they sent me to a psychiatric hospital about 15 miles away. And I was there for another week. And my God, Eric, that was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life.
How? Just seeing the other patients that were there, or the introspective time that you had?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, again, with all your rights and everything stripped away from you, you're not even allowed to go outside, you know? I mean, speaking again, corn queen over here.
Yeah.
But you think you're okay and you think you're normal, right? And then you go to these places and you're trying to convince the doctors there and the workers, you're like, I swear I'm normal. And then you just start to sound even crazier. Mm-hmm. And then you look around you and you see there are really people there with true psychiatric disorders, and you feel almost like you're wasting tax dollars. And like, but I stuck with it. I was a good girl. I was a good student, and I just did what I was told. And I was woken up every morning at 5 a.m. and poked and prodded at and needles. And I mean, I did everything. That they asked me to do, but it was like one of the scariest things in my life. And, it was just terrible. And I remember the first time I was able to go outside, they gave us a little 10-minute break out in a courtyard, like a supervised break. And I just remember going and standing out on the lawn and putting my face up to the sun and like feeling the breeze on my skin and just being like, I'll never take this for granted again. Mm-hmm. I'll never take this for granted again. And while I was in there is where I got introduced to the 12-step program I'm in now. And it was kind of like, here's the hand reaching out to you. This is it. You either make these changes now or you don't. And it's basically been one foot in front of the other since then.
So you're still participating in the program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have someone that holds you accountable that you meet with regularly?
Not as regularly anymore.
Yeah.
When I first got in the program, I didn't get a sponsor until like 3 months in, because I was like one of those tough-headed, naive people. Like, I got this on my own. I don't need nobody. Mm-hmm. I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to share my story. And I'm just going to sit in the back of the room and just be here, get my paper signed and leave. Because a lot of the stuff after that, I had to do some like, court mandated, hospital mandated, outpatient therapy and whatnot. But about 3 months in, I was going to these meetings and I was kind of feeling like I was kind of feeling like the outsider, and I wanted to be where like all the cool kids were like doing all this stuff and like talking about all this like sponsorship stuff and all these step stuff. And I was like, well, what's all that? Like, I want to do what they're doing. And so, they always say to find someone that has what you want, which is kind of a tricky thing. And when you're just going to meetings and just listening to people and you don't really know them. But I met a lovely gal who would stand up and speak, and she was funny and sarcastic, and she would swear like a sailor, and she was smart as hell, super smart. She was a professor in her previous life. And I was like, I like you. So, I was with her she's still my sponsor, but we don't meet weekly. We used to meet weekly.
Yeah. Another tool that's been super important to you that you've been open about on your social media and in your personal journey is medication, right?
Yeah.
What role has that played in helping you get one foot back in front of the other?
It almost scares me to think about, which reminds me I need to order some more. It's scary to me because I have this like balancing act of like wanting to live this like holistic lifestyle of like just letting the body heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other part of me is like, but maybe that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And look what happened when you weren't doing that before. When I was at that psychiatric hospital is when they told me that I needed to go on medication. And I sat across from the doctor and she said, here's the thing. Your brain it just does not fire properly. Mm-hmm. Okay. It doesn't make enough serotonin and it does not fire the synapses properly. And you're going to need medication to assist that. Mm-hmm. If you want to feel somewhat normal. You might not ever feel all the way normal, but this will at least help. And when she said that, I wanted to be upset. I really wanted to, like the 5-year-old in me wanted to throw a tantrum really bad. But at the same time, it was almost like the first time in my life someone had given me an answer as to like why I didn't feel normal. Why I felt the way I felt. They gave me a solution and I was craving that. And so I was just like, okay. And ever since that day, I've been taking medication. And, as I said in the beginning of this, that I'm not perfect. My days aren't perfect. I still fight with depression. And I still fight with anxiety, but it looks so different from before. And then on top of that, I've gained so many different coping skills now that it's so much more manageable. Mm-hmm. And now I say that it scares me because I don't want to be on this for the rest of my life. I don't want to be, quote unquote, a slave to the pill or medication. But at the same time, I'm really content in my life right now and okay that that's what that means. And that's what that looks like for me to lead a somewhat normal life where my brain fires.
Yeah.
Fires normally.
Yeah. I mean, if it's working for you, you can't fight the anecdotal evidence, if it's working, that's what it is.
Right. But then sometimes I wonder, what if it's just because and this is something that I want to talk to you about because I have a feeling you are with me on this. It's like the power of the mind is so strong. So sometimes I wonder if this power of positive thinking could be stronger than that medication. Yeah. Or what if it is what is working rather than the medication? What if I went off the medication or, someone switched out my medication for some type of placebo? But I was so gung-ho on this being the solution and the answer that I didn't know. And my positive thinking was what kept me moving forward. I don't know. It's something I'm curious about.
Yeah, I definitely am in the camp of the mind. In most situations, I believe the mind can heal itself when given the right tools, when you're dieting properly, exercising, getting enough sleep. If you're doing the basic things, I mean, I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I would like to believe that that is enough to get your mind going properly, firing in the right ways. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who have chemical deficiencies who just, biologically cannot produce a certain amount of chemical. So I don't know. It's maybe a situation where you dial it back little by little or something and see what kind of changes that makes.
Yeah. Here's where it gets tricky, though, too. I used to be epileptic when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a few grand mal seizures, and they were very, when prescribing it to me, they were very like, if you stop taking this, there's a high chance that you will have a seizure. Like you, kind of like you said, you will have to either dial it down, or like if you plan on going off of it, you can't just quit it cold turkey because.
Okay.
And so that scared me when she said that. So again, is that just them saying that to like get that pharmaceutical paycheck?
Yeah, I know. The whole thing is just so weird to think about because then you throw in the money side of it and it's just like it's impossible to know what to believe whenever money is behind the whole thing, It's just so like, is it really helping me or is this just helping someone's wallet, someone's paycheck,
And that's why the beauty of it and why I got into coming full circle being a health coach is because I wanted to have all avenues open to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out of that psych ward, I was like, this is a new lease on life here. Someone was looking out for me saying, okay, you got a second chance here and you can't take it for granted. You need to start taking care of yourself, start taking care of those around you, and, being a lot more grateful for the opportunity, to be alive. But I literally went back out to the world, and you can ask anyone that kind of knew me in those months following. I had such like a yes man attitude. Like you could be like, you want to go skydiving? And I'd be like, let's do it. You want to do this? Like, yeah, let's do it. Like I literally just wanted to try everything and do everything that I could, because I was in this like, why the hell not? But like in a healthy way, right? Not like let's do drugs. Why the hell not? But like,
right. Not like we're going to die anyway. I'm going to do.
Yeah. Like I just wanted to really experience as much as I could and get as much knowledge of the world as I could underneath my belt so that I could make all these informed decisions about how I wanted to live moving forward. Mm-hmm. One of those things being that I ended up getting into is roller derby.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that I always wanted to try growing up. So I came out of all of this and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I always wanted to do this. So no better time than the present. So I joined a roller derby league.
I always thought that was so badass of you to do, to just hop into.
So fun. I mean, it was so hard. So I didn't last longer than a year.
It's cool. You tried it. You stuck it out for a year.
Yeah. And that was part of it. And then also with the health coaching thing, it started as me just exercising on my own. Right. And I noticed, kind of as you were talking about, like that started making me feel better and making my mental attitude a lot, sunnier and more positive. And I was like, I need some more accountability behind this. I want some people alongside me to do this with me. So then I started this health coach journey, and I did it through like this MLM company, essentially, where I am setting clients up with programs to help them achieve their goals. Mm-hmm. And everyone's goal obviously is very different. Some people just want to lose weight. Some people want, really to stick with different routines in their lives. Some people are just here for mental health reasons. Some people are on a sober journey. So it's really like getting to know that person and what they want in terms of their goals, and then kind of setting them up with A, program, B, steps in their daily life, C, what their nutrition could look like, whether that's meal plans or just general knowledge, because some people like just have no idea what they should be eating or what some type of healthy nutrition looks like. So then I started diving into that. I started meditating, which was like a game changer for me because I couldn't sit still for longer than 5 minutes before. And so all these things just kind of started creating this full human, full life, full everything in terms of me and my coping skills, tools in my pocket, if you will, tools on my tool belt to help me get past the depression, get past the anxiety, and help me with, any type of like feelings I was having if I was having any difficulty with my sobriety.
Mm-hmm. It must feel pretty good right now then to be stuck in this quarantine and be so well equipped, like having spent the time in these previous years already equipping yourself with the things to do with so much time alone. You're in probably a much better place in a quarantine right now than you would have been several years ago.
100%. Although like it's, they always say in the program, like the worst thing you can have as an addict is a bunch of free time.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about that the other day, is how terrible of a time this must be to be a newcomer right now in sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
Like just imagining myself being, I don't know, 5 days sober and then being hit with like a lockdown quarantine. Like there's no way I would be able to do it. And I know people going through that right now. And I just like literally send them daily texts and check-ins and remind them how much of a badass they are for fighting through some of the hardest part of their sobriety journey.
Yeah.
During this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even really considered that someone just a week into their sobriety or something, and then this happens. I mean, I put myself in that position. I would just be like, well, fuck, it'd be really hard to just not be like, forget this, I'm just going to pick up again after, which kudos to the people who can stick that out and keep it going. Cause it's the ultimate test for that right now.
It's a terrible, terrible time for sobriety.
Yeah.
At the same token, like in the same breath, I always like to stop and ask myself, and I ask others, like, just remember your why. Mm-hmm. And for me, a big thing that I do whenever I'm getting too complacent in my sobriety, and I think for a second, like, maybe I don't need to be sober anymore. I think I can handle drinking again. I think I can go back out there and drink like a normal person. I remember who I was that day in that hospital bed. I remember who I was that night before. And then I remember who I was the week after, 2 weeks after. And I think about those different points in my life, and I just say, like, to myself, who do you want to be? Mm-hmm. Where do you want to be in those 3 pictures? Is it worth it to you? Because you haven't changed. You're never going to change. And that's, once you accept that, like, you're free. Mm-hmm. This is all about acceptance. This journey is all about acceptance. So once you accept that old life is gone and you're carving out this new life for yourself that's so much more beautiful and better and healthy, and has so many more opportunities for you, then sitting here in quarantine in my living room and hanging out with my cat is not.
Yeah. Plus, getting through the quarantine and maintaining sobriety has got to be like the ultimate just badge of honor for a sober person to get through something like this and keep the ship sailing straight. It's pretty sick.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, sadly, I've heard of 1 or 2 people from the program that have already gone out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been about a month of us being here, and like that saddens me.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't mean they can't come back in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the beauty of it.
It's not a once you're out, you're out. You can always.
No, not at all. Not at all. But you really have to know yourself. And for some people, it does mean they can't come back in. For some people, it does.
What would you say was the most difficult part for you in your recovery? You're achieving sobriety. Well, I guess sobriety is not something you necessarily achieve. It's something you practice. But what's been the most difficult thing for you in getting better?
It's going to sound funny, but it's it goes along the lines of what I was just mentioning about acceptance. When I first got sober, I literally cried because I knew I couldn't go wine tasting anymore. I cried over the life that I knew I couldn't live anymore.
Yeah.
And letting go of some of those things. And although that sadness and that grief is not as strong anymore, I don't cry over not being able to go wine tasting, there's still that sense of, as the cool kids say, FOMO, of not being able to experience some of the things that other people can.
Mm-hmm.
Going out on a date night with my partner, and he'll be able to do a nice whiskey flight, and I cannot partake. I'll smell the shit out of that whiskey flight, but not being able to enjoy that saddens me.
Yeah. And
sometimes I wonder, does that sadden him that I can't be that partner to him? We've had plenty of conversations. It does not, but still, that's stuff that is in my head that I question. I'll start future tripping and thinking about, I want to be at grandma on the rocking porch on my, porch, drinking a glass of wine or a mimosa at 3 p.m. And then I get sad about not being able to do that. And then I hear my sponsor's voice in my head being like, don't future trip.
Yeah.
You are so future tripping right now. All you have is right here and right now. Like, you are granted just today. And that's why they always say one day at a time. Like, just take it one day at a time. You might still be that grandma, but let's not focus on that.
Yeah.
And let's focus on what you have today. And so that's been the biggest blessing of all of this, is learning to let go of that stress and that anxiety of like so much of like what's next, what happened, what has been, what didn't happen, what I could have had, and just learning to be so much more present in what is right now.
So I guess talk a little bit about some of the other tools and stuff that you used and still use are in your day-to-day life to help you get through all this. Meditation was one, right? That's something you still are doing. So I guess a good like sample size of what you're using to help yourself mentally would be what's going on right now during the coronavirus. Like, what kind of things are you doing right now to take care of yourself?
So I think a big part of it, and a lot of people make fun of this saying, but I give myself grace.
Yeah.
And what I mean when I say that is, allow yourself to not do whatever you think is supposed to be done. If you want to sleep in till 11, go for it. If you miss the workout today, that's fine. There's always tomorrow plus 30 days.
Yeah.
If you eat the ice cream, don't beat yourself up for it. Just make sure that there's the next right thing, the next right choice in nutrition. So for me, there's just been a lot of creating a balancing act in what I'm doing. So I'm just making sure not to give myself a hard time for the actions that I am choosing. So there's been a lot of rest, with spurts of production and progress. So like I'll relax and sleep in, and then I'll try and find maybe like moments for like a 10-minute meditation. I love guided meditations. I don't like to listen to my own thoughts. That's obviously gotten me in bad places before. So as much as I can, I like to listen to guided meditations. I use the shout out to Insight Timer app. Not sponsored. And so I'll do about like 10 minutes of that. And then one of the great things too is all the abundance of movement that has been available to us while we're in quarantine. So turning on good music and dancing and just anything to like make you feel silly and put a smile on your face, because guess what? No one's around, no one's watching, you're by yourself. Yeah. Like just do something that makes you smile and feel stupid at least once a day. And then all of a sudden, like I'll go back on the couch and I'll lay down for another like hour or so, catch some Netflix. And then I realize I should probably get up and do something. And then I clean for like another solid hour. I'm like picking up, and then I'm like, wait a second, I need to get in touch with my spiritual side. So then I go over and I have like a little altar area, and I love lighting candles and like using my diffuser with the essential oils. And I'll just play around with my tarot cards or my oracle cards. And surprisingly enough, the oracle cards have been really instrumental in this, by just, taking a card, reading the message, and just kind of sitting and letting that message resonate with you, and how maybe it has to do with what's going on around you, around in the world. And then also like, how can you share that message to others? How can that relate to others in your life right now, or who needs to hear that message? And then of course, getting time in with my cat.
Has this internal battle of like wanting to be productive and feeling like you should be taking advantage of this time versus wanting to rest, has that been raging on in you pretty much this whole time? Because I know I've been experiencing it since day one, just this desire to be like, oh, I need to take advantage of all this time at home and do this thing that I've always wanted to do and do this thing. And then there's this other part of me that's like, nah, just play video games, just chill.
It has. I keep seeing all these things pop up of like, hey, remember that thing you said you never had time for? Guess what? You have time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, they're right. But at the same time, the underlying part of that sentence that pops out to me is that you have time. I'm very much a realist when it comes to what we're going through. And I know this isn't going to end tomorrow. I know we have another 30 days of this. And after that 30 days, it's probably going to be extended some more. Anything that I want to do or learn, besides maybe guitar, I'm just going to take longer than think.
Depends on how hard you go at it. You could make some serious strides.
I just know that I have the time, and I need to remove that pressure from myself. And just like the beauty of anything, with learning anything, gaining any habit or any routine is just little bits at a time, like bite-sized chunks, like how you eat the elephant,
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. I mean, there's definitely some things that like I want to get done or I want to learn. But for me, I know I have time. And I take that pressure off, so that when I do go to sit down on the couch, I don't play video games. I'm terrible at video games. I probably would be. But when I do go to sit down on the couch and like watch TV or Netflix or whatever, I'm not sitting there in that shame and in that guilt, because I feel like those feelings of shame and guilt, if you let that negative energy fester inside you, that's just going to eat up your insides. And I feel like that negative energy like breeds further inside you, and you don't want that stuff in there.
Just gonna weaken your immune system and then get the virus. Just worry yourself sick.
Yeah,
I really don't have too much more, Rachel. Is there anything you want to add?
More than anything, I just want people right now to like be at peace with themselves and at peace with the situation, because you and I both know, like, any type of additional stress that arises is going to weaken that immune system. And I think that the power of the positive mind is the ultimate here, right? And so if you just keep that positive mindset throughout your day to day, whether it's like when you're doing the dishes or making the bed, or when you're dancing around the living room, or when you're calling a friend or FaceTiming, you have to keep that positive mindset, because it's the only thing that's going to get you through this quarantine. Like that is your saving force, is what's in between your ears.
How are you maintaining a positive mindset? What are you focusing on?
Yeah. It sounds kind of trite, but like reminding myself it could be worse, that people do have it worse, practicing gratitude, both inward and outward, out loud, saying thank you to those around you, saying thank you to the universe for what you do have, the cup of tea in your hands or the pillow below your head at night. Yeah. And just when you do feel those negative thoughts come into your head, maybe you pass by a mirror and you're like, oh God, I'm wearing these pajamas again today. Instead, you just replace that thought and be like, man, I'm wearing these pajamas again today. How lucky am I to be wearing these pajamas again today? And you just completely use that power of that positive mindset to just make that shift. And like, that's the healthiest thing you can do right now for yourself. And of course, incorporate that physical movement, because we're so bound to become so lethargic during this time, but we have so many, tools at our disposal via the internet and friends and FaceTime and Zoom and all of this to move. But even things as simple as like just rolling out a yoga mat and stretching on the floor, or like I said, putting on your favorite record, or like a crazy Spotify playlist from the 90s and just turning it up to the point where you might annoy your neighbor and just dancing around, anything to just kind of get that blood flowing for just 10 minutes even. Yeah, and also you turn it off and you're going to be like, why am I smiling? Why am I smiling right now? This is crazy, but you need it.
For anybody who has like fear of going to the gym and working out around other people, this is the best time to get in shape, because you can just log into a Zoom meeting. Nobody has to see you, and you can steal some moves or do an Instagram stream. There's so much. Twitch streams. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for your time, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.